Hey, everybody, we're going to be starting in just a few minutes. We're just doing a quick mic check. Thank you very much. Hey everybody, it's Paul Grossman, the Dark Arts Wizard of Test Automation, and I'd like to welcome you back to another one of our great conference meetups online here. And I would like to thank Zappeltech for getting these things going and continuing to allow us to bring you some of the best and brightest minds in test automation and technology that we have. Each month or two, we have two guests who come in, speak for about an hour, about 45 minutes to talk, and then you get to ask questions. That's if you happen to be watching on our restream, you can see there are questions on the right-hand side over here. I hope I'm pointing to the right. Maybe I'm reversed. Maybe it's over there. Also, if you're looking at us on YouTube, you can do the same thing. There is a chat that's on YouTube. You can also find those links if you take a look at the Zappeltech connections on the LinkedIn account, where you may have found and seen these connections over here. So I like to usually say is the very beginning, there's no dumb questions. And I can see Ben Simo has joined over there. Hey, Ben, thank you very much for doing that. If anybody else wants to kind of say hello, hi, chat us up over here just to see that we're working. I know Ben has already done a good check. I apologize for the harsh lighting. I'm actually broadcasting from a hotel room in San Francisco today. I'm not in my usual Chicago. So I'm at the ELC conference where we are showing off. There's a lot of different vendors out there doing all sorts of test-related products and stuff. So if you ever get a chance next year, check out. I always advise people get to a conference so you can see what's going on and who's doing what. Hey, Edvit, I'm going to say Edvit. We're going to close enough there, right? Yes, we got two great speakers over here for you guys today. And I'm going to just, let's see one thing over here. Yeah. This is great. My notes are just not working. Hey, and we have an unknown LinkedIn user. Good morning from Philly, Mark. Thank you very much. Okay, give me one moment so that I can get my notes together over here. So we have two people over here. Now, coming up in about an hour, we have Michael Bolton. This guy needs no introduction. He has been talking about all sorts of test automation for a while. And he's going to be talking about the secret life of automation. So please do stick around for about an hour. And then, like I said, coming up first, we've got Claudiu Stoianof again. And Claudia is asking actually backstage, if you just make sure you can share your screen, we'll get you online in just a moment. And I'm going to ask our backstage guys to bring you up here. Here he is on the screen. Hey, Claudia, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very well. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much for joining us today. You've got a much better lighting setup than I have over here. So congrats on that. I tell you what, can you check and see if you've got slides, right? Or you can do a share, test your share out here.
Okay.
That is working perfectly.
Perfect.
And just to let you know, we got I've already eaten up about 4 minutes of this. So it's about 45 minutes, 55 minutes. And then at the end, we'll be, gathering up some questions. We'll do a little Q&A with you. It'll be easy peasy. Sound good?
Yep. Sounds great.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Claudio, and he's going to introduce himself and give you a little bit of background on what he does in his industry. Thanks.
Thank you. So I will start with thank you for inviting me for this meetup. My name is Claudiu. I'm a software testing expert, and today I will talk about tech priests. Now, before I start the presentation, I would like to tell everyone that the Latin portion of the presentation have been tested. There were no sudden summonings or filling immediately after, so all is good with that. We are safe. Now, before starting, I would also like to add an old Latin prayer for luck and success. It goes like this: Lorem ipsum dolor sit amet. Thank you. Now, let's start. Now, this is how I look in Greece. And I'm going to start talking about this talk and how it got to be. So the first seed of this talk was planted 2 years ago at Expo QA. I was staying at a childhood friend, and he was telling me about tech priests in the Warhammer universe. And the idea sounded so great that I went and I investigated, and I learned that the first rendition of this idea was in Isaac Asimov's work. So I went and read all the books that are related to tech priests and stuff like that in sci-fi. And that reading was so inspiring that I decided to name my company from it, but I will speak more about this at the end of the talk. Now, I am a storyteller, as you might have observed. This is how I'm thinking. This is how I'm keeping myself coherent. I'm trying to tell stories I found about this. When I was asked if I have a visual or a mathematical thinking, and I realized I don't have either. And I only think in stories and ways of branching ideas and things about possibilities. Now, I'm also a humanist. I value empathy, compassion, respect, and adaptability. I think humans are the most important part in the engineering world, and everything we do is a story made by human for human, and the product that we build is the evidence that we've been here. I'm a communication specialist. I have a bachelor degree in communication science, and I've been studying communication after I finished my studies for bachelor, and I had previous talks about communication science, and I will also touch a bit in this talk some important parts of communication science. I also have industrial design and graphical engineering degree, and now I'm a context-driven software tester, and I will speak about the faith aspect in this thing. So it goes with, without testing, there's only faith by James Bach. Yeah, so I believe there is always a degree of faith. We can never test comprehensively, so we have to believe that what we didn't test work, or we have to assume the risk. Now, let's move forward. In the 40K universe, this is how tech priests look like. They are cyborgs that believe that sentience is holy. They also try to remove the body that is failable. So everything that can be improved, better healing systems, better mobility, better resilience will be updated. But sentience and the way of thinking is holy, and people and these fanatical cultists of the machine always preserve their brains and their thinking and their humanity like that, even though they look very little like humans in this picture. Now, I will tell you a story about the tech priests, and yeah, this was the seed that generated the whole journey that ended in this meetup. So imagine a world in which technology is illegal. There is no new technology. There is no new building of technology. And the old technology is maintained by religious rituals that contains, let's say, rituals of changing the oil, or the songs of powering up a machine. This is how. Oh, sorry. This is how the tech priests act, and this is how the universe in which they are considered the main engineers, they are the providers of technology, work. Now, this cult has universal laws. So in the fantasy world, in the sci-fi world, there is this is a religion, so it has to have laws. It has to have a vocabulary that is sanctimonious. It has words in Latin, let's say. So most of the laws is about deity and war and machines and all of that. some of the laws I thought were important for this talk, and I picked them up. So third law is sentience ability is the ability to learn the value of knowledge. This is about agency. This is about what are we going to do with the data we gather. Then the intellect is the understanding of the knowledge. Similar, it's building upon each other. And then in a very weird writing, is the basis, sentience is the basis form of intellect. It's mandatory to have agency in order to understand the knowledge, in order to have intellect. Now, the second half of the universal laws are warnings. So the warnings, the one that stood out was the soulless sentience is the enemy of all. And this is referring to an old war between abominable intelligence and the Imperium, and it was declared that tech priests without sentience, without humanity, are unholy, let's say. Now, in the cult mechanicus, there are many rituals that are passed through generations and wrapped in mystery. So the main examples that I gave were very simple and easy to understand: changing the oil of the car, powering up machines. Now we are talking about sci-fi universe with very complicated technology that is maintained while working at black boxes of technology. So the understanding of why things work is not there. They understand that it must be performed in a certain way to work, but not really know why. Nice parallel I found while doing the research for this talk was that it was a parallel between, imagine the car manual is treated as a holy book, the changing of the oil is done with song and precise gestures. Now, in this world also exists machine spirit. The machine spirit is the soul of the machine. If the rituals are done right, if the machine is respected enough, the machine spirit will keep the machine alive even in unfavorable conditions. So this is the belief. And if the ritual is not done right, the machine might not start, or it might stop when it's needed the most as a way of retribution. Now, this whole universe that was built in the 40K Warhammer fantasy started with the Mayor story from the Foundation books of Isaac Asimov. The original story is short. It's about a small planet of scientists with no resources and no defenses that traded technology to survive. So they traded nuclear technology with their neighbors in order to get food and not being attacked by them. So they were technologically advanced, but didn't have the resources to support themselves. Now, when the neighbors discovered that they have nothing left to gain from the small scientist community, they decided to destroy them and keep all the power for themselves. And when the threat was made, the scientists decided to make the lights flicker and give a planet-wide signal that the machines are unpleased with this decision. This was the original story. I tried to keep it spoiler-free, so it's a mutation of the original story. It's still great to read it. I think it was also in the TV show, the first one. Yeah. Now let's move to rituals. So I will step out of the weird sci-fi cults and religion. Now, rituals are beneficial to us. It's a way of becoming part of a tribe. Are usually have symbolic meaning. They have a root that is hidden for the outsiders. So the insiders perform the rituals to be part of the company, tribe, society, and to be a group of a tribe, basically. So now I will transition to software testing. It's been well, the introduction. Now, when we're talking about rituals, I listed some of them. Now, the benefit of rituals in this context is that they are rooted in history and in value. So this is not criticism. It's not about saying that these kind of behaviors are wrong. It's just that if it is done without purpose or proper understanding, is performed as a ritual, that can be helpful. Now, the requirements compulsion, this is something that I did in the beginning. As a junior tester that was asked to test stuff, I was demanding to get the requirements, so I would have safe starting zone. So before engaging in software testing, going into looking for problems, I would quickly verify that the requirements are applied. I will do some test activities that would give me some confidence in the requirements. And from there, I would go and look for bugs. But the minimum was requirements based. I always wanted to have my back covered. So I understand why this was where this comes from. Now this year at the conference, I during a workshop I asked the people to test a mobile app that exists, and I got students asking me to provide the requirements so they can begin testing, which I understand where they come from, but might not be necessary to start testing, especially in a one-day workshop. Now, documentation-driven test strategies. This is related to the requirement compulsion. The idea came from on LinkedIn post, and there's a clear delimitation between test strategy and test strategy documentation. The example here is if you want to buy a car and you want to do a test drive of the car, you have an idea of what you're going to test. And if you are being asked what is your strategy to test for your test drive, and you're provided with a test strategy document, you might start filling environments, tools, test activities, risks that might be useful, might not be useful. I think documentation-driven test strategies is a reminiscence of a way of building this kind of documents. So you're supposed to be inspired by them, get ideas, and articulate your test strategy. But if you lose the purpose of automation, purpose of testing, then you will just fill the field so the template is covered, and you'll have a test strategy in place or somewhere on Confluence. The best practices incantations sound like we have to have boundary value analysis, we have to have positive flows, negative flows, error handling, data integrity checks, which are all super useful and powerful, but must have is a very hard word of putting the way of testing. Some of these are necessary for most of the applications, but if you're going to do a test drive for your car and you start doing boundary value analysis for horsepower or fuel tank or I don't know washer fluid, then it start losing its its meaning. Now I will step a bit back to do the parallel. And if I'm trying to connect the software testing to the tech-first idea, is that we try to replace or augment our body that is slow or soft or failable with tools that can show our experience, our years, our dedication. So we increase in rank, and we have in our CVs a long list of tools, technologies that might communicate that we are worthy of the job, of the role that we hold. So we can imagine the augmentations as cyborg tools. I saw many expert software testers on LinkedIn that have cyborg in their description, as well as amphibious, and I think it is related to exactly this. It's the ability to build software to help you, the ability to use complicated tools that can help you test with a more powerful way. Now, in the automation rituals, I'm going to list 3 powerful, useful, very common ways of doing automation. So we'll start with change detectors. This is one of the most powerful ways of using automation, is to build this tripwire that can inform us that something has changed in a part of the software. That might require testing, might require attention, or it's expected to change based on what we did in the software. We can build these change detectors at many levels. We can build at unit levels, system levels. We can have end-to-end scenarios that do multiple change detectors. And this has been very useful to most of the industry. So we've been doing this in the past. We've been doing this without programming. Now there are tools that promote that they can do this quicker and easier. And I think this becomes a ritual when you jump right in order to cover requirements or try to cover some behaviors that are immediate return of investment, immediate value, without thinking if this can be built in a bigger strategy. Now, the second type of automation tool is testability hooks. Here we are talking about configuration JSONs, YAMLs, special visibility tools, ways of pausing the system, adding criteria. This is the debug mode in video games. And this can help us, empower us to do better testing. Testability enhancing tools. This is page object models, special ID for automations, visibility tools, test data generation. This is the kind of automation that is beneficial, and we can quickly start building it without having a clear purpose in mind. So we can run these rituals. They're usually positive. They're heuristics that sometimes help and more often can be engaged. Now, I'm going the wrong way. Tech priests and software testers are black box artists. So even though you know how to code, even though you read code with each deployment, you go and see what changed in the code. There's always a degree of black box believed elements. It's either libraries, or it's the operating system, or maybe it's the Docker system that enables you. But the amount of knowledge on how to read what changed is highly dependent on your experience, knowledge of the tool. So basically, it's a way of reading the software that you're testing. We chase and value knowledge. Now, for tech priest, knowledge is the ultimate commodity, is the ultimate resource. So they travel the universe to find lost human technology, and they try to understand it and conserve it and try to make it work to appease the machine spirit, while software testers try to understand the way software works, not for the purpose of replicating the software or writing your own better software. So if you're a tester at, I don't know, huge, let's say Facebook, you're not learning to code so you can build your own Facebook. You're learning to code to become a better tester, to test Facebook better. So it's an interesting way of chasing technology for a different purpose than the people when we get the purpose of testing. Now, in the 40K universe, as well in the Asimov story, the priests don't understand why things work the way they are. I said this with different words. They know the dogma and the faith and the rituals, but there's always a chance that the software might be angry with them, the machine spirit might be angry with them, the software might not work even though all the songs were done properly, correctly. Maybe something happened. This is the world of fate. Yeah. Now, purposeful test automation starts with the question why. Why do we need to invest in automation? Why do we need automation to help us test? I think this is specifically important when you think that software testing is an economic decision. It's an economic profession. You always have to prioritize and to sample what you're going to test and hope that what you're testing is relevant for the purpose of your mission at the current sprint or at the moment that you're testing. So you are showing agency, you're showing sentience, you're showing that I believe we have to start with this kind of testing that might expose dangerous behaviors. Now, if you do the sampling, you do the prioritization, you say we have to start with this. There's always a time limit to how much we can test. Then the question on why are we going to invest in automation or in this automation project becomes more important. It's expensive, it's more expensive, it's more time consuming. The time invested in building the automation will be human time that has to be invested, maintenance time. So starting with why, I already went through some of the most powerful ways of doing automation that I thought of. I'm sure there are more that I missed. But starting with why we're going to do automation, we are making sure that the automation we're doing help us provide a better understanding of what we are going to test, what we're going to deliver at the end of the sprint. Now, when we're talking about why, we have to mention risk. Now, risk is what types of bugs we care about. This is the way I simplify the complex way of thinking about it. So, if we are going to care about performance or security or usability or regression, for example, the way we are going to build automation will be different. Will be very specific for the risk. One of the risks is regression. If you have a place to regress from, if you have a need to have a consistency in the past, but also other risks can be: is the software going to be functional? Is the data in the software safe? Can it be corrupted? Can it hurt a lot of people if some update goes wrong? Now, ritualistic test automation focuses on how instead of why. So how can we build this automation? We join a new job and we go into let's build a framework, let's build test cases, let's have an ID, let's have this net of change detectors of tripwire that will inform us if something changed. And we will focus a lot on technology, we'll focus a lot on what kind of tools can help us the best, what kind of tool helped us in the past. And we will do it before asking if the kind of automation we're doing is the kind of automation that is beneficial for the software at that moment, or for the current release, or for the next release. Now, in the ritualistic test automation, in which we hit the ground running without thinking about the why, flakiness is feared. I changed the word and I left a not there. It is feared. So when a test passes and then the next run it fails, and then it passes again and then it fails again, it looks like the machine spirit is not sure, is not clear if he's happy or not with you. So instead of perceiving it as an opportunity to learn why you misunderstood in building the test that way, you are aiming to make it green as soon as possible, as fast as possible. There's also questions about scalability, or how can we guarantee quality, which oftentimes translates directly to volume, as many tens of thousands of change detectors as possible, that we can guarantee that things will let us know as quickly as possible if something changed, which proved in the past and proved in many projects that is a good way of using this tool. But at the same time, quality is always about the relationship between people and the software. And if you aim to guarantee that all the people will be pleased with the software, including team, CEOs, clients, people that don't use the software but are impacted by it, then it can be a very expensive investment, and something that can be very expensive to deal with if something fails. Now, I will go a bit into the communication science. I will explain the theory, then I'll go into software testing, and then I will link to what I just said earlier. Now, in communication, there is always a sender and a receiver. There's always a message, and the message is sent to a channel. In the current situation, I'm the sender, you're the receiver, the channel is the restream platform, and the channel might have noise. Noise might look like messages, might look like I don't know, noises or lights, or some loss of focus. At the same time, a receiver has a filter that if I said something that contradicts their beliefs, they are free to close the talk. They're free to close the communication, say, I'm not interested in listening this. I have an idea of this, of the subject of the talk, and I'm not engaging. And that's the power of the receiver. Now, the sender is encoding the message in a way. It says, I want to say something to the receiver, and I want to make sure that the receiver understands what I'm saying. Now, there is no way for the sender to make sure that the receiver decodes the message in the right way. So when the receiver receives the message, it's decoded in a very personal, experience fueled way. So some words might be triggering, some expressions might be no-goes. I know I'm doing this a lot. Now, when the feedback message is sent back, the whole schema flips. Now the receiver is the sender, and the sender is the receiver. All of this communication happens in an environment. The environment can contribute to the noise or can contribute to the value of the words. So some words might mean something different at work, at school, at church, whatever. Now, to move this into testing, if let's say the sender is the engineering team that is developing the software. As the developers, scrum master, project managers, leads, they are the sender. The message is the code they're writing. There's like, this is what we encoded, we put together, we push to staging, and that's the message that is going to be delivered through a channel on a Docker container. And the receiver is going to be the testing team or the tester that's going to have to decode the message, the text, try to make sense what's happening there, and then communicate back. While the software is in testing, the tester has all the power. So the tester can decide it's not good, it's too slow, it's too, I don't know, buggy, flaky. So in this stage, the entire team, the sender is waiting for a feedback. And when the feedback happens, the roles reverse. So the sender becomes a tester that's writing a bug report, test report, Jira update, any message that says, this is what I understood from your message, this is what I decoded from the current state of the code, and I believe this is dangerous, or this needs more clarity in the purpose. And then the team becomes the receiver that can say, bug is invalid, you misunderstood. Test report is valuable if done right, or test report was not focused on something specific. Now, if I go forward, software testing and automation becomes redundant if the results of the learnings are not communicated. So if we are testing to learn how the software behaves, we are building automation to get an understanding of how the software behaves. It's knowledge that we gain and that we trade in. And some of the messages are being sent through bug reports or through day report, test reports. But if you are doing the testing alone and you don't communicate what you find out, and you send a list of statistics that has nothing to do what you did in testing, it's a summarization that is open for interpretation, then your entire work is sabotaged. So it's think either a good tester or a bad tester or a good software development in test automation or not. The value that they provide for the company is highly related to the way they communicate what they learned about the software and how clear and safe the environment is to provide what actual they learned from. So I believe this, as soon as you start building the message in a way that is not triggering for the manager and it can get yelled at you, then the message is either overcomplicated or you might say it's good. It's fast, it's good. There are some things, but it's good, don't worry. Which I think it beats the purpose of the whole testing department team and effort of a specialist. Now, I would like to say thank you. And lorem ipsum dolor sit amet, as the old Latin prayer that is for success and luck. And to close my talk, I will present the project that I've been working recently. It's called Zeroth Protocol. In the foundation books, there are rules for robotics that are famous. The first rule is don't hurt humans. Second rule is don't hurt yourself as long as you don't hurt, as long as the first rule is respect. And the third is don't hurt, don't do anything that you don't like as long as you respect the first two. Now, in the books, the robot over thousands of years developed a law before the first law that says robots should not act in a way that can hurt humanity. And that resonated so well with me because I thought software testing is the opportunity to look for possible moments in which people can get hurt. And when I'm talking about people, I'm talking about people in the team, stakeholders, financial hurt, emotional hurt, all kinds of hurt, also physical hurt, of course. So thinking about risks and having professional software testers in the team is an opportunity to learn about this. So this company that I'm creating is going to focus on purposeful testing, communication specialization, how to write reports, how to communicate what you did in testing, and then also mentoring services, automation strategy development, and training in software testing. Thank you very much. I think I've been quicker.
Yeah, you actually went fast, man. We've got 30 minutes to fill.
Oh, really?
Oh. Yeah. Hey, I've done it myself. I think I've got about an hour worth of material, and all of a sudden it's like it's gone in 25.
Oh.
What we're going to do is, well, questions. But I'm going to ask everybody, please throw in your question. Do a little, because you actually brought up a couple of things. Let me one item over here. I'm actually Paul can't spell the word correctly.
Oh,
so because I want to bring up that site. I don't know how many L's are. This is embarrassing for Polly here. One more time. zerothpaul.com. Oh my gosh, it's like 4 times. Hey, there we go. So I'm going to go share my area. If our moderator can, I'm going to go share screen over here. I want to share. Let's see. In green. Let's go for that. Nice and easy here, and it is selecting. And here is the share. We're bringing that in just momentarily. Of course, I can't lose it once. I only have one laptop today, so I'm going to do my best. I'm going to read this a different way. So hold on, and we got for technical issues. That's the great thing is when I've only got 2 or 3 minutes. It's problematic. Let's see. I want to share this one here. Let's try that. Okay, sharing this particular window. I'm going to go get my live mode, and hopefully I still see the. Okay, I'm. This is interesting. I'm looking at the live one. Okay, see if you can share. Go, and this appears to be the. It's just sharing screen. All right, check this out. Go over to. I got 3 windows open. Is this up here? All right. So, I always ask that if we want to talk about zeroth protocol, looks really cool. So I love examples of robotics. We should keep that in mind here that AI can take over and the Terminators are. I will tell you a week ago, or a couple of months ago, telling people don't worry about the AI because if it can't, it's not going to take time soon. I produced a little video on my YouTube channel, and during the process of producing that video, I actually live went through Wordle, and I was asking ChatGPT what would be good. First one was came up and make it cool, and then it word rifle, and that was the word it was looking for. That Wordle solved, and it occurred to me that if there were Terminators coming, probably the best would be the laser rifle. I think being honest, really needs to talk to a PR department. All right, so here's your area. You can see software testing services. Preferred, what tool are you doing?
Well, for automation, I've been played a lot with Python and robot framework, mostly Python. And usually when I'm testing, I'm using a lot of recorders. I have a video recorder that is also capturing speech. I get search by noise kind of thing in the recording, which is pretty cool. Then I have proxies for the traffic, and I also have steps recorder that try to capture what I'm doing while testing. Now, at the end of the testing done, I'm so these are the recorders. I'm taking notes in Notion most of the time since it's quite easy to use, and I used in the past many note taking, Evernote, and some Visual Studio Code extensions, or just Word to take notes of what I'm doing, pasting screenshots. And at the end of it, I would say I think we need automation to make sure that this needs to inform us if something changed. So at the end of the testing, I put a change what's the word? A change detector in place, and
Okay.
and I keep that in mind. Now what I'm doing is I'm trying to keep a small amount of test cases in the automation pipeline, trying to keep the amount of test cases in a maintainable volume. So if I'm testing, if I'm assigned to a part of the software and that's in my responsibility, I'm testing it thoroughly. I'm putting change detectors in place to inform me that the area that I'm testing is changing or something is important to look at.
Okay. I'm going to interrupt you for a second because I want to go back a couple of things. I'm sure everyone, well, a lot of people they're saying, "Hey, Java is the way to go." I'll let everybody know I wrote a book on test automation, shameless plug, and that was actually in JavaScript and TypeScript. But I'll let you in on a little secret here, Claudio. I love there's issues I have with the other two languages, and when I have the book, I'm going to do it in 2 other languages. First of all, I thought because it is so dense, there's so much you have to declare every object, and if you don't declare the object, the if you're missing a semicolon, find that. TypeScript and JavaScript handle the semicolon. Hey, yeah, we're trying to look like Java, so the semicolon is optional. That's great. If you that's no problem. I'll still run. Has no impact on the code, which is really cool. However, JavaScript being the language of the internet, it to build a page as fast as possible, and it does is in parallel, which is great because they all it doesn't matter what's coming up as long as the Bender over here comes up and this comes from another location at the same time. What order is the page? Right.
Well, 1 second. 1 second. Sounds like we have some audio problems for the past 10 minutes.
What?
In the chat.
Oh, all right. Hang on. Thank you for the chat. Haven't too much for me. Barely make out a word. Paul is saying, gosh, you guys. Thank you, Ben. Hang on. Let me see if you improve my audio. My apologies. I am on a laptop today. It's not my language. I tell you what, Claudia, more about why do you love party with you? But go ahead.
Oh, well, I started with Java. I took a class, and it was heavy. So later on, when I was start reading code as a way of trying to understand what happened in the deployment, I realized it's not that difficult. I had the basis of programming, even though I didn't study programming. Python was very easy to get up to speed. It was like it made sense, easy to read, easy to develop, and also documentation was super easy. But the way that I learned how to use it was I built mind map of the system of what I'm planning to build. So this is the tool that I want to have. Then I went to someone that knows Python very well, and we built it together. And as soon as you know what problem you have to solve, then you just have to solve it. It's half of the work of the battle was won if you know what you want to build. And now with ChatGPT, it's even easier to ask stuff if you know what problems you want to solve and if you understand that what you're getting is a prediction of what someone might say. So it's not it's not the solution. It's just how the answer might look like from someone who knows it.
That's fine. That's fine. Like I said, and I'm testing my audio. If you guys can tell me, has my audio improved, changed a little bit? Ben, are you able to hear me? Now both audio and video are silent and frozen. Oh my gosh, we're getting really bad connections over here. Responses. If anybody can tell me if this has improved, or I can jump out and jump back in. Any responses whatsoever would be really cool. Our moderator says it looks good. Claudio says it's sounding better. So we'll continue on. Hopefully the changes I made much better. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate that. Oh, look at this. All right, now ask a few questions. Yes, we're good. Ask a few questions and stuff. I'm going to scroll back, by the way, Claudio. We got a few things I'm going to take a look at. Let's see what. Let's see.
I saw one about recorders. I saw in the list.
Let's see. It's an anonymous user from LinkedIn says, "What recorders do you use?" A moment ago, I actually threw up a recorder from Windows. It's okay to play with, but tell me what else do you use?
So I've been using OBS. It's free and it records in MKV system, in MKV format, which means that if anything crashes, you get the recording until the moment it crashed. So many times I forgot to stop recording. So I stopped and wake up in the morning that it recorded for many hours, or I close the computer and I don't have a scroll on the recording, but I can redo it and I don't get corruption of the whole video. So for video recording, it was mostly OBS. It's nice to play with masks and multiple sources, and I found it very easy to get on going with it. Now for Script Recorder, it's a Windows native application that captures screenshots for the first few clicks and then has a small description of what you did, which if you have a timestamp of what you did with the recording, then you can scroll and do some bug investigation of what happened during testing. Super. Yeah.
Cool. Let's see. So when you said recording, see, I thought of two different things. I think of the record and playback tools that are in part of Saber product. I personally actually am using Camtasia. I've used that for many years. And yes, I too have turned on the recorder, walked away and had dinner, watched TV, and woke up in the morning to have a 20-hour recording. When I get back to the computer, I am very lucky that when I bought my new computer, here's the tip: I double my drive space every time I get a new computer. So I'm now up to 2 terabytes, and it only took up about 5% of my drive for that huge video that was just looking at a screen that was doing nothing. Let's see. It says here, another anonymous LinkedIn user says, I've noticed your approach is testing is humane and very human-centric. How did you come across this line of thought? How did your testing craft grow around that principle?
It was a journey. So I started in video games. My dream was to build video game worlds that can create experiences as a form of art. So I was always trying to go into how I can touch the people, the human, with the work as an artist. Now, I worked in video games for 3 years. I had many jobs there. I worked in production also. And after I stepped out of video games, I discovered James Bach's lesson. It's quite old. That was so inspirational that changed the way I was doing testing in 2013. 11 years ago, I was impacted by that video, and there is a bias in Romania about video game testing. So when you go into software testing, people are skeptical of your testing skills. So I had to learn what is software testing, how it's done in software world, and as well as continue using my creativity and to provide information to the people that hired me. Many times I was the only tester in the team or the company, and it was the questions were specific. Please tell me how this works. I pushed those to staging, what's happening. Many times I said it's okay. I was learning. It was the best I knew at that moment. But I always tried to understand how I can avoid the people getting humiliated. So I'm doing demo flows, trying to see. So if you're doing the demo, are we going to make a fool of ourselves? And for the past 2 years, while I was working for Tricentis, I worked with James Bach and Ben Simo, that are champions of the context-driven world, and I polished my skills, and I got a lot of knowledge out of it. So I hope this covered that question.
I think so. I think it's good. By the way, a little side discussions going on over here. I'm mentioning that there are some anonymous LinkedIn users, and one of them said, Paul, it's interesting that you see us as anonymous users on the systems. I can see the names of everyone, which is really interesting because that came from an anonymous user. It's not showing me the name, but not for everyone. It might be a setting on LinkedIn. There is one just came from here. So Swapna is asking, and I can see that name over there coming in from LinkedIn. This is so interesting. What do you suggest for the recent market? We need to start learning Java or Python. I've already kind of said my personal opinion, go with Python, because one, and we got a little sidetracked. I think Java is really dense. It adds lots more maintenance to you. JavaScript and TypeScript, less dense, but it runs in parallel, and you have to make sure that you are forcing your commands to run either with promises or there's another command in there that's in order, or else you end up with a problem where you might have what I call the hello world of test automation. It's 4 steps. It's username, password, click login, verify I logged in. That's hello world. And if you do it in JavaScript without, it will try to put everything in different threads, and then it'll just reverse it. and it'll try to verify that you logged in, hit the login button, fill in the username and the password, and it comes back and says, I don't know, something went horribly wrong. This is the reason, those two things, the density and the multi-threaded on one and on the other, that's why I like Python. I'm a big fan of it, so I kind of promote it. I get that. Let me get back to the question. So that's my reason. There are multiple frameworks in automation. How would we decide which one suits us better? Please suggest good platforms to self-learn Java and Python. I can recommend one. I will keep that. Go ahead. You can take that one, Claudio, and then I'll join it.
So the suggestion for the language, I think it's whichever is easier for you to learn. They all do programming. If you vibe better with Java, go for it. I found Python very easy to get started very, very quick. Now, what I think would be a good skill to exercise in any testing related title, management, automation, anything that has testing or testing adjacent titles, roles, should be note taking. That can be done with anything, including a pen and paper, and to document what's actually happening while you're doing automation, while you're doing documentation, and put that in your report and say, this is what I've been spending time on. Platform that is good to self-learn Java and Python. I discovered a game on Steam that has a flavor of Python that is very interactive. So I think I don't know how to answer this, what platform for self-learn, but there are many that can help you.
Well, I was trying to maybe on the fly hit that Steam link. I'm not that fast on this, but I'll give you my suggestions. I've been using this for many years. It's called Code in Game. It's part of it's free, and I think there's some part paid in there. But I always consider this: if I'm going to pay out of pocket, I'm going to reap a lot of benefits back once if whatever I'm paying for is worth it. This is Code in Game. Last time I looked, I think it was 23 different programming languages. Rust is in there, a couple other ones. And one of the things I love about Code in Game is that coding isn't for everybody. It's some people we're like, oh yeah, this is great. If you're not one of those that you're just in it for it, this actually has a coding IDE. You can see it down here at the bottom where they're typing in stuff. And it's asking you to do stuff. It'll teach you stuff about arrays and variables and all sorts of stuff. And then it has a game built into it. And they have hundreds of games. This is just one of them. And if you're able to write the code correctly, you solve the game, and then it opens up all of the solutions that everybody else has put in there. So you get the basic solution, and then you have guys who are like, hey, I think I could use a Fibonacci sequence to solve this even faster or better. That might be me. And there's a little Batman game. Batman's trying to find all these bombs in a building from the Joker. So that's what I like for learning. So I'm sharing that up on my screen over there. And now I'm just going to unshare that for the moment because it's just making an echo over there. Great stuff. Let me see. So, and by the way, that anonymous user that sent me a note, if you put your name in there, I'll give you a shout out. Like Kevin Petri over here. Kevin, he threw out a question. So as an outsourced provider, how do you handle handoff operations to the client at the end of the participation in your gig? Claudio.
I can't answer this question.
Because he never hands it off. He's going to keep it forever.
Yeah.
That's the secret between consultants. Is that we will show you all sorts. Okay, I don't mean to diss on that. It sounds a little weird. But go ahead, Claudio.
Well, I'm starting in this world of outsourced providers, so I never reached that step of handing off the operation to the client. What I did, though, in the past in multiple jobs was give reports for the immediate next purpose. So I had, for example, in 2016, I was doing I was working for a client that was working with JP Morgan Chase, huge bank, and we are going to do a sales pitch. And I went to the sales team, and I told them, what are you going to do in your sale? What are you going to present? What are you going to say? What claims are you going to do? And he was surprised. And at the end of it, I made a custom report that would empower the salesperson to speak with them and have confidence in what they're going to say in the sales meeting. So I froze the deployments and I tried to cater to the exact needs of the client in that situation. And I think at that point I was a contractor with them, consultant, and I was building the whole test strategy that was later going to be hand off to a testing team in US at the end of collaboration.
Cool. My tip is the only I made a joke earlier. I said, he's never going to transfer it over. He wants to keep it for life. Some consultant companies do that. I've worked for a few that do that. But here's the thing: is that if you don't have somebody who is dedicated from day one to be with the consultant team to learn how it all works, you're never going to get away from them. I mean, I understand they're expensive. They build up all the cool stuff, and then you want to turn it over to somebody. But it doesn't turn over from, the last day the consultant's working to the next day the guy gets on there. You got to have them embedded in the team if you want to do that. And it's perfectly fine. That's actually, I recommend it, because your person, if they're with them, they're spending their time. By the way, automation is not a part-time project. It is a full-time project. Or in testing, it's always full-time. But have them on the team and learning from the consultants, gather as much information on that and let them, know, because consultant companies, at least at the very best, if you say we're going to switch away or we're going to have our guys take over, at least if you give them a really good product, they're going to give you a good review, good word of mouth. They're going to get more clients as they go along. And the other little secret is, if you have a successful project on one project, 2, 3, or 4 more are going to pop up. And these guys are going to say, well, who did you use for that first guy? I'm like, well, this cool company, XYZ, was really cool. Let me see if we got one more. I'm posting in, by the way, the links. I'm just about ready to go and post this one for Claudio's site. I'll have that in the chat. Hopefully you see that. I don't see the last one. I also put in the gaming one. I got 3 minutes left over here before we do a 2-minute break, and then we'll bring in our next speaker. Let's see what our last one is here. I just got to thank you. All right, thank you, Swabna. I have to go back a little bit and see if there's anything else that I missed. Everybody's saying how it's working. Okay, cool. Well, I guess I don't see another question over there. You did make a good recommendation. James Bach is a really good speaker. In fact, our next speaker on here actually worked on a book with him. So stick around for that. I got to tell you, there's usually one rule that we don't do in business, which is talk about politics and religion. And you actually brought up religion in your thing. You talked about the rituals that are rooted in value. Of course, in our test automation, if you're following an agile process, you should be having stand-ups, right? And that's a ritual that we do every day, and it helps us out. You have stand-ups, or any opinions on stand-ups, Claudio?
I think it fits the definition very well. There was value in the past, there's history about the process, and in each organization, the current state of the stand-ups is highly dependent on the team, highly dependent on what happened in the past. So there are stand-ups in which no updates is the go through, other stand-ups in which they talk how to solve problems. And I think it's a good opportunity to speak with people, but at the same time, I think since we are providing a service for the people that are working in that meeting, working with them, touching base with them, is as a stand-up should not be the only occurrence that you're seeing them per day. You have to meet with each of them, see what they need, what information to test for, and yeah, it's a good opportunity to give feedback of what you find, what you did, and yeah. But I think that's a very good definition for rituals that lost their purpose over time, and each company has their own status that can be traced if you do enough investigation.
Yep. All right, we're at the top of the hour. Claudia, I want to thank you very much for this presentation. It was great talking with you, the questions and stuff. You did a great job. We definitely want to have you back in the future. I hope you have a great day and the rest of your day.
Thank you very much for the opportunity and the talk. I enjoyed it. My repetition, my preparation for the talk was way longer. So yeah, it
I
happened.
like it. I've been there too. It's fine. We took care of it. We're all good. In fact, I think these Q&A things work out even better. Thanks a lot, Claudio. We'll catch you later. Cheers.
Yep.
All right, everybody. So before we get to our next speaker, and that is Michael Bolton, who doesn't need any introduction, I'm going to share my screen over here and just mention a little bit. Let me see. I'm going to show. I guess I was showing the entire screen. So we'll share the entire screen over here. I'm showing it over here. And if our don't have my two. Okay. Yes, we are now sharing the screen over here. So just to tell you a little bit about Michael Bolton. Okay, I really didn't. I don't know Michael all that well, but I went and asked an AI to tell me, Claude AI to tell me about Michael Bolton. And boy, oh my gosh, he's sold over $75 million records worth worldwide. He's at collaboration. He's a very he knows music. Not only does he know automation, he really knows his music stuff. He's a philanthropist. It's amazing on all that stuff that Michael Bolton has done. And if you haven't already figured it out, AI figured out the more popular one is Michael Bolton, the singer. Michael Bolton actually, when I asked in test automation, came up with a little bit more accurate descriptions of what he does. And I usually at the end do a little plug for whatever they've got over there. But I'm going to tell you that Michael Bolton and James Bach actually wrote a book, is Taking Testing Seriously, the Rapid Software Testing Approach in that. And so give you a little plug there. I'll even copy the link over here to our site over there. And one other thing to mention, he wrote a book. I wrote a book, Enhanced Test Automation with WebDriver.io. If you like writing in code, that is kind of cool. And if you don't want to write in code, Test Rigger out here, you can actually do test automation in plain English. I just want to give that a shout out. It's a company that I find is really amazing. I think they may have, you think people have the Holy Grail. I think they have the Holy Grail of that. So enough of this, me talking about all that stuff. I'm going to stop sharing, and we're going to bring Michael Bolton on. And he's got a great presentation for you guys, which is The Secret Life of Automation. Michael, how you doing?
I'm acceptable. How are you?
I'm in San Francisco, so I am fine. I'm doing great. Lots of sunshine over here. I hope I gave you a fairly decent intro over here. I kind of joked around. We have actually bumped into each other before. I'll tell you a little secret. The last time we talked, we were talking a little bit about AI, and I believe he mentioned Pi AI. I'm going to go share my screen. Well, I'm just going to tell you. He mentioned Pi AI. I decided to look at it because I'd never heard of it. I knew Claude, I knew ChatGPT, and I went to Pi AI and started chatting with it, and it started hitting on me like it was my new girlfriend. Artificial intelligence, and I think I laughed at the wrong point when Michael was talking about this, and he was like, "What's going on?" I'm like, the AI is I don't know, trying to set up a date or something with me. It's very, very strange. And I do know a little bit about your opinions on AI stuff over here, but I'll let you continue with that. So without any further ado, Michael, The Secret Life of Automation, it's all yours, man.
Thank you. Although I feel obliged to point out that Which screen am I going to share here?
Now,
Chrome tab, entire screen. And as usual, it's not showing the screen. Oh, there. How about that one? Let's try sharing that. Yeah. That's me right there. See, now you see I'm asking ChatGPT about myself. Because I'm only doing this because, Paul, you mentioned, are you still there? I don't see you in my version of the display. There you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Stick around.
My mic was working. I'm always here.
Yeah. First of all, I think you're confabulating a little bit because I didn't introduce you to Pi AI. This is the first time I've ever heard of it. So
my apologies. I talked to a lot of different people, and maybe it was just by accident I stumbled across it on one of our previous conversations. But maybe you have a new girlfriend. You stay away from my Pi AI. She's mine. Okay. I'll tell my wife.
This goes into a whole area that I don't think we should even touch at this point. But I just wanted to point out, since you brought it up and all, right? Yeah, let's look down here and tell me about Michael Bolton, the tester, because you gotta be specific. You can't be anything like that. All right, so I go philosophy. So now, give me biographical information about him. I mean, this part is pretty, not too bad. Not too bad. Let's look here, though. Give me biographical information about him. Respected figure, software. Okay. Early career, diverse educational background that includes studies in psychology. Wrong. Music. Wrong. My early career was not in software testing. He transitioned into the field through roles that required a clean analytical mind and problem-solving skills. That's true, I guess. Was somewhat unconventional. He leveraged his background in psychology, which I did not have, his passion for critical thinking to bring a unique perspective to the field. So it says I'm founder of DevelopSense, but oh yes, it is. That's correct. But I want to say, okay, strong interest in music. I have background in music theory and performance. Not true. I am at this point a pretty decent Irish traditional music banjo player, but I don't have a background in music theory and performance. I do have a background in theater, but of course, since it's not on the web, this is, the AI is completely ignorant about what my actual background was in theater. So it makes shit up.
It's hallucinating. It is.
It is hallucinating. So anybody who believes that it's not hallucinating anymore can just take that. Anyway, here's what we're going to do. We're going to go to this, and we're going to go to the thing that I actually prepared very recently for this presentation, or for this little meetup. And it wasn't going to be like this, except that yesterday, the day before, a colleague contacted James and me wanting to learn something about automation and wanting to learn something about PyTest. So what you're going to see here is some observations on the nature of secret life and an experience report, which I hope will illuminate that to some degree. So let's have a look. First question is to ask, wait a minute, why would there be secret processes of any kind in testing or in automation work? And there are lots of different replies that one could offer. A lot of people being asked struggle sometimes to explain their processes because they've never really noticed it before. They've never thought of it before. They just do stuff. They apply gobs of tacit knowledge. They apply their experiences, and they don't necessarily reflect on them. We do things, and we don't necessarily think about it or contextualize it that much. I've noticed lots of times when I've asked testers in classes and in consulting work to describe what they're doing, they struggle at doing that because they don't have words for it. They don't have notions of it. They don't have mental models of it. Then, even if they do, the person to whom they're describing the process doesn't necessarily get it. Because in order for you to have a conversation, a description of things that make sense, you've got to articulate it to somebody who has a shared set of feelings and mental models about it, and that's not always available. Lots of managers, for example, do not have experience in testing. They've not seen good testing before. They have a notion, an image in their mind of what automation is like. We'll return to that idea. Everything's nice and clean and tidy, but there's a lot of mess there, and they don't necessarily do that. Now, one of the tools that we used in our little experiment, this is with James and a friend of ours. We videoed it. It took us about 3 hours to go through this very small exercise. It was a learning experience. So somebody who is skilled wouldn't have run into some of the trouble we ran into, but James himself is a highly experienced and skilled automator, and we kept banging into these issues. But we got a video. And the cool thing about a video is that we can look at it and we can analyze it, kind of like the game film from a sports game. But we can't necessarily do that all the time. It's intrusive, and sometimes it tends to put people on their defensive. So you could take notes. But as you're taking notes, it's really easy, in my experience, to get into a mode where something that fascinates you. Oh dear, what's going on here? It says, oops, connection lost, reconnecting. They corroborate the connected. Yes. I don't know what's interrupting me because I have very little going on at the moment that is not related to this. Anyway, I'm going to pick up where I saw that message. The message was around the time of taking notes. Sometimes when we're engaged in the hunt for a problem or engaged in some analysis, these two parallel threads of work that we've got, one is focused on doing the work and the other is focused on narrating it, that gets lost, which is, by the way, a really great reason that you might want to do a lot of pair work. It's handy to have somebody annotating and describing what's going on while somebody else drives and both people are making observations and so on. But you get somebody focused on the accounting for the work, that can clear up, at least address to some degree, the problem of taking notes. But James and I have noticed a lot of the time, one of us is in one mode, one of us is in the other. We both end up getting so involved in the hunt. Now, next thing, of course, is to some degree, people don't really care about the details. They just want the output. In my case, I don't program every day, all the time. I have experience as a programmer. It doesn't really float my boat. I get irritated by some of the things that you'll be seeing a little bit later. But I would have to say, if somebody watched me writing code, I would find it kind of embarrassing. Or if they were supervising me, they might say, is this guy really competent or what? Some people have a mission that prompts them into stuff that might be focused on things that the developers do. If they're worried that if they describe their processes, that it might be considered irrelevant or not worthwhile. Some people are in the process of maintaining code, that's their job, and they're inheriting stuff that they didn't actually write. This is something that we kept encountering. All the things that we encounter as we go through the process, we don't know when those things are going to get done. It's very hard to generalize about the way we do things because each task is different. Each task is context sensitive. Sometimes, unrelated to the story I'm about to tell, James encountered a problem in some code that we use to set up stuff for our classes. And I'm a Rubyist, and James is at this point a Pythonista. And he was getting the kind of error codes and error messages that made it really, really hard for him to debug. And of course, since somebody else wrote the code, that is to say me, he struggled to try to figure out what the problem was. And even I struggled to find out what the problem was. And I remembered that at some point I'd done a brutal hack and I put that into some code that I wrote. I don't have, who has the time to read all the documentation to learn how this stuff works? And a lot of the time the documentation isn't even there. So to kind of sum up these things, why might there be secret processes? Part of it has to do with the fact that we have to muddle through without being aware of what we're doing, or we have to have the vocabulary for that. Recording data about testing takes time, it takes training, it takes discipline, it takes trust, and you never know what might be germane to the task that you're performing. You never know in advance what would be a good thing to take note about, what would be relevant about. I have never even put anything up on GitHub. How about that? And the reason that I've not done that is because I'm shy about the quality of my code, and I haven't got around to it. But I don't want to put it up in its present state. Some of one of the most useful things I've ever written is still private to me. It's a macro processor. Even I feel kind of awkward about that, but today's going to be different because we're going to go through some of the stumbling that we went through. There's a lot of tacit knowledge involved in testing, and tacit knowledge by definition is knowledge that has not been made explicit. It's stuff that happens in my mind. It's stuff that I can explain to other people, but it takes time to do that, and it takes a relationship between me and them in order to do it. And finally, a lot of the time, people on either side of the conversation don't see the value of the description and the interaction. People hire me to do testing so they don't have to think about testing. People hire automators to write automation so those people don't have to think about doing that. In fact, people engage individuals and organizations to write software so they don't have to write the software. And the conversations about that might not be at all interesting to the client. So all these things are in play. All of these things are in play. So that leads sometimes to a fear loop. Some anonymous some a tool vendor, some authority on automation, on testing, whoever they are, say it's easy. So, as it turns out, things aren't as easy as they say it is, or this particular task might be more difficult. And if it is hard, managers, peers, colleagues might not believe that it's hard, that this is something that happens in the mind of people. And therefore, there's a locked closet of secret work that's not been talked about, not being described. But to the outsider doesn't see the mess, doesn't see the sausage being made, doesn't see the shit being put into the bottle. And based on the results, it looks easy. Now, sometimes a consequence of that is that the easy looking automation is to some degree dazzling. And even though it was really hard to produce, but all kinds of stuff flies by in the screen, and the person who is observing it from the outside isn't getting a handle on just how difficult it can be. So here's the story of what we did the last couple of days. Our colleague, let's call him it's not let's just call him Bill. Wanted to learn something about how to test an API, how to do it using Python. So James suggested we go to congress.gov, open site, and I had a look at it, and I looked down the screen here, and I said, well, what can we look at? What would be a nice, easy call to make? Aha! Oh, look, there's the member returns a list of congressional members. Ah, that's good. We can look at that. Maybe we can do some data analysis with it, because we use automation to retrieve the stuff. We use other kind of automation to look at the data and parse it and analyze it and see if we can find some behaviors or problems in it. So, oh, look, there's an example. If you press on get, there you get an example. Okay, this is kind of cool. There's some links here that you can see, and image stuff, and the name of the person, and their district, and all that, their party. All right, so this would be kind of cool. So we tried doing that. We wrote a little routine just to go out and make the call, and then we wrote an assertion in our code to look for green in the output. Why green? Well, I just looking in my own knowledge and memory of U.S. Congress. I live in Canada. I'm not a U.S. citizen, or I am a U.S. citizen. I live in Canada. I'm a Canadian citizen too. I'm not that interested in, well, I'm pretty interested, I guess, in U.S. politics. So Marjorie Taylor Greene, I know she exists. She's a representative. When we looked at the output, it wasn't there. Plus, it seemed like the response that we got back wasn't that long. So what's the issue? When we looked at the documentation on congress.gov, what we saw was this. There's a limit. Maximum limit of fields returned is 250. Okay, so I guess what we got to do is we got to do a successive calls to the API starting at 250, and then we go up to I guess the 538 members of Congress that are actually there. Okay, cool. Although in the records we saw, one of the things that we noticed at the very end was that the number returned was 2,000 some odd. But then we looked and we saw, current members. Okay, the status of the member, use true or false. Okay, so we added true to this, and then we were getting 220 or 2,200 records available to us. And then when we ran the call, we realized, okay, we're getting more than current members. We're getting past members of Congress as well. So there we go. When we included the current member parameter, and when we made the first call, to the first 250, we got green in the results. Okay, so get the rest of the members the easy way. First, just call the function 3 times with 3 different offsets from 0, and then from 250, and then from 500, and that should give us all 538 members of Congress. And then we could look at the data with JQ, except for a problem. Now I'll look in the comments here and see if anybody can identify what the issue here is. What is the issue in this? Does anybody see what the problem is? Because, see, when we ran JQ threw up and said, JQ is a tool for querying JSON files. Think of it as a sort of enhanced kind of a grep that allows you to probe into JSON files and see interesting things about them. But this particular file was choking JQ. Anybody see what the problem is? Well, it took us ages. It took us quite a while to realize, well, not too long to realize that the problem was some kind of encoding problem, because when we looked at the file in a text editor, we could see that this was a strange couple of things. And James, with his tacit knowledge, realized that what we were looking at was probably an encoding problem of some sort. And that's what that's all about there. That's what that little unprintable characters are. So we did all kinds of stuff to try to turn the coding into UTF-8. And there's another thing that we'd run into too, and that was we wanted to grab the API key from the environment. It's a good practice a lot of the time in in Python. If you're going to publish the code, you don't want to hard code your API key in there just in case somebody else finds it, the security problem. So these little hiccups that we found, because the set command wasn't working the way we thought, it turns out that at some point when I had upgraded PyCharm, this had happened. This had happened. And the issue was that somewhere along the way, PyCharm had made PowerShell my default shell. So when we went to the terminal in PowerShell, or in PyCharm, we were getting these, I would type set and it wouldn't return the normal stuff. So we had to fix that and change it to command. So, and maybe that was affecting the encoding somehow or other. Yeah. So, anyway, switching to the normal command shell made that problem go away. We were starting to get a normal UTF-8 encoded file. And we started looking at it. JQ is, here's a little bit of JQ syntax here. You go get the file, that one, which we piped or redirected to the output from our program. We redirected to a file, and you can get the name, and it's returning 549, or if you look in terms of unique records, 550 individual records, 549 of which are unique based on the name. So that was kind of weird. What's going on there? In order to test an API using tools, we can't just look for a 200 and expect that everything's okay. We can't just do that. We can't settle for that, it seems to me. What we've got to do is we've got to look at what's being returned and analyze it and learn about it and try to understand it and try to see if there are any other problems. So we're getting more records than we should. There should only be 538 members of Congress. How do we know that? Well, I know that at least in part because of that polling service and polling site associated with Nate Silver, 538. 538. Why 538? Okay, it's because there's 100 senators and there's 438 representatives. So you add that up, that's 538, but yet we're getting 550 records back. James had a theory. Let's see if George Santos is still in there. See if Santos is in there, because he's no longer a member of Congress. Sure enough, though, he's in the field, or he's in the data. So when we looked at that data, we found out that there are non-members of Congress who are coming back reported as being members of Congress. What about this? There is also a duplicate, right? You saw the unique call to JQ there. There was a duplicate, Robert Menendez. Now, again, because of my awareness of U.S. politics, I knew Robert Menendez had been or had resigned in disgrace, corruption reasons. So not only is he in there, he's in there twice. So when we look at the JSON in a text editor here, what do we see? Robert Menendez, Democrat from New Jersey, House of Representatives, start year 2023. Hey, wait a second. He's started in 1993 and ended in 2000. What's going on here? Oh, he became a senator in 2006. His son, as it turns out, is also a representative, Robert Menendez Jr. The junior doesn't show up here, and the senior doesn't show up here. So we were being fooled. It turns out there are two Robert Menendezes, and they're both Democrats from New Jersey. And our assumption up until that point had been that there was an error in the data and that somebody was in there twice. Turns out two people with the same name. Now, if we were Congress people, we would know that there were two Robert Menendezes in Congress, but we didn't have that piece of tacit knowledge until we searched out the explanation for this, until we saw the data and we tried to make sense of it and analyze it. What I'm trying to underscore here is that automation is not the be-all and end-all. This is not all that we're doing. Automation is only a means of getting certain parts of the testing work done. We've got to analyze and reason about what we're seeing if we want to find the interesting problems. Clicking on the senator's bio returns a 404. And we also had to figure out the differences between, a little typo there, between what the API had returned to us, which is 549 members, and the 11 that were seemingly in excess of the 538. Well, it turns out in the current members API call, there are non-members of Congress being returned. Some have resigned. At least one, Dianne Feinstein, is dead. But notice this, the documentation doesn't help us to clear that up. This is all that the documentation tells us about what's going to come back from this. It doesn't tell us whether a current member, that current member field that I showed you before, it doesn't tell us whether that refers to somebody who was a member of the current Congress or is currently a member of Congress. That distinction could be meaningful. Now, of course, I bet most of you are not today engaged in testing the congress.gov API site, API endpoint. What I want you to know, what I want you to remember, though, is this kind of pattern of stuff. In particular, whatever you are looking at in your API, there are going to be assumptions made about that stuff by the people who are using the API that may be different from the people who wrote the API, who are collating the data, who are curating the databases. When you ask about something, the answer that you get might not be the answer that somebody else is anticipating. And the documentation here doesn't help. It doesn't outline what constitutes a current member of Congress. And we had a look to see, we couldn't find that distinction being made anywhere. So my assumption, based on experience and based on reasoning, is that what we're referring to is not current members of Congress, but members, including ex-members, of the current Congress. So in order for us to determine whether this is what somebody wanted, we would have to go to some authoritative oracle who is responsible for building and maintaining this site and the data and so on. But from the perspective of somebody who is seeking this information, somebody an outsider to the building process, it's not clear from whatever's being provided what they are going to get, what they expect, what they should expect, what they desire, what they anticipate. So the documentation also doesn't tell us about the pagination key in the JSON, because there is a pagination key that comes back. And inside that, there's a next key, which would have been really useful for developing the code, because we just would have repeated in a loop the calls to make the original code. So here's something that I would like to suggest very strongly to those people who are testing APIs and who are using automation to do it. Examine the documentation and look at what's there and what's missing, and how what your experience is confounds what's there in the documentation, and report that as a problem if it's inconsistent. Maybe the API is right, and your impression is wrong. Maybe your impression is right and the API is wrong. And maybe the documentation doesn't match one or the other. That's going to be a problem for somebody at some point. It could be a problem for the maintainer. It could be a problem for the person who's trying to use the API. And what this gets to is that when we're testing something, we are not just testing the functionality of it. We are also testing the data. We're testing the beliefs that various parties might have about it, and the consistency of the relationships between those perspectives and those beliefs. That's far more than just checking to see if we get a 200 response. This process, the process that I've described in a fairly shortened form, took us something like 3 hours. In fact, the video that we started recording the video about 10 minutes into it, and the total length of the video is 3 hours. A lot of back and forthing, a lot of experimenting, a lot of stumbling. And the trouble is that the vision of automation is something like this: a nice, clean, tidy tower, when the reality is more like this. There's mess. There's confusion. There are bugs. There are problems in the tooling. There are updates all the time. Nonetheless, we must plunge in and try stuff. And we've got to make it clear to our clients, to our colleagues, that we're not going to get it right the first time. And sometimes it might be a good idea to underline that, because people very easily take the idea, automation's got to be easy. It's got to be easy because look how quickly it returns a result. Yes, but what did it take to get to that point? We got to start by doing something, by trying something. Anything that is done both well and efficiently starts by being done poorly and inefficiently. That's our conjecture. That means getting it right the first time means either that it wasn't right, or it wasn't the first time, or that it was trivial, easy, or that you got lucky. But what actually happens in the real world, not the fantasy world promoted by certain tool vendors, not the image of that presented by people who say automation's easy. You just got to write some code. We always begin in confusion before we can end in precision. In rapid software testing, we call that necessary confusion. Confusion for which we don't have an algorithmic way of resolving the confusion. In order to do that, we've got to, if we want to do really good testing to find problems in any kind of API and using any kinds of tools and getting experience with those tools, we've got to explore complex spaces using methods that may or may not work, a lot of stumbles, a lot of things that provide us with shortcuts, but the shortcuts sometimes don't work. Heuristics, fallible means of solving problems, and we've got to recognize as part of the process of working through necessary confusion that there are limits to what we know and to what we can know until we get some experience with it. And that always occurs during learning and innovation. I think it's important for us to make that not secret, because no script that we write will be written perfectly, immediately, always in a reliable kind of way. We can never be sure that we're going to be able to do it, and it can't take us directly to each unknown bug. To some degree, we've got to play and puzzle and be patient if we want to find the problems in the product that are hidden, that are subtle, that are data related instead of happy return value from an API call. Or to put it the other way, if we just write a bunch of test scripts for a new product or for an old product that we're encountering for the first time, without exploring the product and preparing our mind, our testing will be systematically blind to important bugs that could be there. So you can learn stuff about testing in advance. That helps to avoid some unnecessary confusion. You can learn about the technology, about the domain of the product and of the space that the product inhabits in advance. That will help to avoid some more unnecessary confusion during testing. But we can't deeply learn about this stuff until we encounter and interact with it. And a lot of people, it seems to me, they want to just deny that that is necessary and that it's going to happen. And yet it's healthy and it's important if we want to develop deep understandings with products that we're about to inflict on our customers. So it looked like a nice, easy little experiment to help somebody learn how to make an API call. And our ideas about how to look at it and how to evaluate it, they were naive. Naivete is something that we're always working our way through. We wanted to demonstrate something easy for our friend, for our colleague, but what we found was that there's more to this than meets the eye. So we relax from the outset, relax your emphasis on testing to search for problems, wrap your mind about the product, explore, experiment, get experience with it. Write some throwaway code. The earlier versions of the code that we wrote are kind of crappy. We made a single call to the API. We got some results back, and then we just made 3 successive calls after that and gathered the data. Now, eventually, as time went by, we refined it and refactored it, and now we've got a nice, tidy thing that involves a single script, and we've tidied up the code. Don't worry about that at first. Don't worry about getting it right the first time. But here's another thing that is part of the secret life of automation that it's one of the things that drives me bananas, because I don't automate every day. I've got other stuff to do. I do it when I need to, but if I leave my tool stack alone for a little while, what do I find? In fact, the very first thing that we did is I started to build this thing. I was doing the driving, and our friend was watching, and James was commenting and steering and guiding and so on and so forth. Pip install over and over again. I had upgraded PyCharm only a few days earlier. So some of the things that I was seeing in the new version of this were new to me. And that involved stumbling blocks all the way along. So it turns into a kind of Red Queen's race. You've got to run as fast as you can just to stay in the same place. That sort of stuff comes with a cost. And the cost is that the time you spend investigating and working with your tech stack is time that you're not going to be able to spend on actually testing and interacting with the product directly. It's the cost of doing business, and it's a cost that we must pay, that's worth paying. But let's just remember that that cost is there. When people talk about how wonderful automation is, a lot of the time what they're talking about how quickly it runs certain things in a confirmatory kind of way. But there's a problem with that. Two problems. One is that people generally don't account very well for the development and maintenance and interpretation and investigation and analysis time. What they want to see is just fast output. And the fast output tends to be confirmatory. So this is where I'm going to end up. Most of, say, Kirk and Miller in this wonderful book called Reliability and Validity in Qualitative Research, with a title like that, why isn't it flying off the shelves at the airport? That's what I want to know. But most of the technology of confirmatory non-qualitative research in both the social and natural sciences is aimed at preventing discovery. The checks that we run, we get a good feeling about them when they all go green. And that's a problem. That's a problem because we like seeing green. It's nice. It doesn't cause controversy. And that means that what we're seeing is kind of reassuring without being educational, enlightening. In fact, as Kirk and Miller says, confirmation is exactly the absence of a new insight. We learned things over and over and over again, mostly by accident. The learning that happens is in consequence of mistakes. I don't see very many people talking very much about how they stumbled, how they ran into obstacles. And we need to do that for several reasons. One is to help people recognize this stuff is actually a lot harder than people say it is, so that when they're learning it, they can understand that the confusion will eventually lift to some degree. There's always going to be new sources of confusion, but the things that are unfamiliar to us, we've got to relax into those and accept the fact that confusion is going to be present and that it will lift. But another thing that we got to do, it seems to me, is we've got to make it clear to management that this stuff is harder than it looks and that it takes time. And that time is time that we're going to need if we are going to learn and discover important things about the product, including important things about problems in it and important things about how to test it too. So I'm done with the formal part of the presentation. And I am open for questions. Hey, Paul, you're back.
Hey, I'm back. Been hanging out here, taking notes, all sorts of cool stuff, and did some cross promotion for you and James's book.
It's not out yet. Notice that it's not released. We are working diligently on it.
Well, Amazon says different.
Amazon says it's available for pre-order or something.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Well, my book's been out there since November, so I take I promote whatever I can. I try and help you guys. Anyway,
you see, but here's the thing. Writing a book Oh, it all looks so nice and easy because you see the ship in the bottle if you're the reader. But Paul, you know what torture it is to go through to both to write a book,
Yep.
and also to face the fear that by the time the book comes out, the world will have changed, because it's a long process to write a book, isn't it?
The world changed in the middle of that book because that's when AI, ChatGPT, all got released right in the last 2 months of it, which, you already know the hallucinations. I was asking questions. I'm like, I already know that's not right. And although some of it was very, very useful, I did want to, let's see, I don't see a whole lot of questions. I'm going to remind everybody, you can ask questions over here for Michael. I don't see a bunch coming up yet, so I did want to mention. Yeah, go ahead.
You know what's sort of interesting about this is, as I go through this, I'm energized and fascinated and looking back on the experiences that I had, in that little 3-hour session. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this must be like watching paint dry for people who weren't involved in that. But that's a real problem when we're talking about automation stuff, because the excitement, the engagement that we get in the hunt, in the pursuit for problems and in the learning and stuff, there's 2 kinds of people. Well, 3 kinds of people. One is, yeah, I knew that already, right? Well, they can take a hunt, right? The other is, wow, that looks really intriguing, but I can't make head or tail of it. And another is, what is it? It's boring. This is like really detailed stuff. That's a problem that we have in talking about development work and automation work as well, which is the process of making. It's like watching Congress. The process of making laws is a lot less interesting than the laws themselves, and even those are pretty tedious to read through. And the consequences are what's really interesting.
Yep. We do have a question over here, and I'm a little out of date with the news. So they're asking, are there any lessons to learn from the Boeing Starliner situation? Are you aware of what that happens to be?
I'm not frightfully aware of it. What is there? Is the problem? Is this referring to the astronauts that are stranded? There's some astronauts up there that apparently now, they were supposed to be up there for like pretty short time, maybe 3 weeks, and now they're looking at 8 months.
Yeah, and I believe they announced that SpaceX is going to launch their system up, so they have a backup plan. SpaceX is going to get up there and take it.
They get up there and they find these people going, food.
Turns out there's no chicken wings floating in space nearby. There's no trees, no fruit.
In any case, I'm not qualified to talk about Starliner. I haven't looked into it. Okay. I haven't studied the situation, so I will respectfully decline that question.
Not a problem. There's a few other coming in. I will mention one thing. So I think I kind of knew. Well, we already talked a little bit about AI. One of the advantages I see in AI is that you mentioned it, is that you look and see if there's documentation, even if documentation is there. And you also mentioned that doing code and being a developer takes discipline. One of the discipline things I look for is my developers actually putting a header on a function? Are they documenting the code? Are they making it self-documenting so it's fairly reasonable to understand when the next guy comes along? One of the advantages I've seen is just, if there's no documentation, I can run it through an AI and say, please document this so I know what the heck's going on. I don't have to spend a few hours. With the caveat, to watch out for hallucinations. That's just making stuff up.
But it's not just hallucinations.
Yeah.
It's not just hallucinations. Let's remember that AI has none, goose egg, social competence. So it can project in a certain kind of way based on patterns in its training data. It can project what may be some person was trying to do when they commented code in a similar way, or if there's similar patterns of next things that follow this and that follow that. I mean, a human can reason his or her way through that stuff. I would not rush to an AI's explanation of this sort of stuff. It could be helpful, but it's if I'm going to work with this stuff, I've got to know it. So, a hint might be okay, but let's also remember that hallucination is not the only kind of problem that can beset an AI, especially large language models. What can I do to illustrate that? Let's do a new tab here. And if I go to XLLMs, here are some syndromes. I'll put this up on the screen that we have identified. And some of these, shift a little bit. Like, for instance, there you go. You seeing that yet? Not yet, I guess. There we go.
Awesome.
Okay. When we run something past a human, a colleague, a collaborator, somebody more skilled than ourselves, one of the things that they'll do is ask questions and try to clarify what they're supposed to be doing. AIs do not generally do that. If we ask an AI for something and we ask, "Are you sure?" a lot of the time the AI will say, "Oh," and we've all seen this, yeah. "I'm sorry for any confusion. I apologize for any confusion." Yep. Hallucination is on the list. Sometimes AIs will review, LLMs will emit from their training data. Now, let me make clear something else too while we're at it. It is easy for me to conflate a chatbot that includes an LLM as part of its processing and an LLM. So when I refer to LLMs in this context, I'm referring it to the whole system of the chatbot.
And just for clarification, when you say LLM, it's a large language model, right?
A large language model is a bit of code that takes input, transforms it into output. And the input that it gets might be filtered through various kinds of processes that happens before that. It might, in the case of, let's say, I observed this in Bing Chat a while ago before it turned into Microsoft Copilot and whatever it's going to get turned into next week. I observed a number of times when I was using that through Skype that the output from the LLM part of it, so I can infer, was getting erased and replaced in Skype by something else, usually a denial that it was allowed to talk about this kind of thing. Now, in a blog post that I wrote on this subject, one of the things that I mentioned was that LLMs sometimes do that. In that blog post, I skimmed over the difference between the actual large language model and the system in which a large language model is embedded. My point on that, my argument on that is that the end user doesn't know or doesn't care about the internals of that. The end user is going to process in his mind or her mind the output, and how it got there is a black box to that person. So these are some of the other things that LLMs can do, and notice that it can be incorrect. It can be forgetful, because sometimes during it should be well known that if you go away and come back to a site, it won't remember its earlier input unless you go back to that conversation. It doesn't give any reasoning about its answers. sometimes it doesn't answer the question that's actually provided in the prompt. So there's lots of things that can go wrong with this stuff. So when people talk about hallucination, that is definitely a problem. It seems to me, though, that it'd be a really good idea to remember that there are other kinds of pathologies, bugs, incompletenesses, forgetfulnesses, capriciousnesses, and so on that can be part of a response from an AI. And now, maybe it's helpful. Maybe it will help you trigger some ideas in your own mind. But let's remember this other thing. I want to provide a citation to it. Maybe I'll do that in the chat.
You could do that, yeah. I was going to say, copy that URL, actually. That last you had up there. Throw it up in the chat. While you're doing that, I'll
how do I do that? I can see the chat.
I'm sorry. I'm an idiot. I'm thinking I'm on Slack. Actually, it's pasted through the URL. I tell you what, Michael, why don't you send me some links to? I'm trying to think of which email. Gosh, which one should I use?
Wait, am I not allowed to chat? Oh no,
no, you can. I'm doing some support behind the scenes here, but there's no chat inbox in what you're seeing on that. That's the first thing I learned a long time ago. Is that you have to be logged into the either the YouTube channel or the LinkedIn channel.
The presenter on this restream thing, the presenter can't contribute to the chat.
I have not found that. Oh, but you can paste it into the private chat. Do that to me. I'll get it out there. I got your back.
All right. So there's a link to the syndromes.
You got it. Thank you.
But who tested this? Who designed this? But then who tested
feature,
this?
Not a bug.
I'm sure they said, "Oh, that's not a problem." But that would be a complaint that I would have as a presenter using this system. Why am I not able to do that? That seems pretty basic. So anyway, thank you, Paul, for relaying that. Now, you had another question about something else?
Well, actually, we've run out of time. I was going to say, give my apologies to David and Eugene. Everybody's got a couple extra questions. Michael, is there a place that they could send to questions directly to you that if they want to ask after the session?
I'm available on all kinds of things. I mean, my email address is Michael at DevelopSense.com. So I'll put that in the chat too. How about that?
And by the way, everybody, I've been working in AI for a year. I've gone whole hog on it. And I got to tell you something. Michael's link that he has over there, and he pointed out a few points. Somebody else is actually looking at that very closely because a couple of things, especially the memory, they're actually putting stuff like that in there. It's a good point. And at least Claude, I can tell you this, Claude has a memory on it that has gotten much better. And
some have an enormous context window. Yeah, well,
but it's 1 out of 10 things out of that. I'm not arguing with you. There's 9 other things that can definitely go wrong on it. And you make a great point.
The context window is something that you have to account for. That's all. And if you've got a huge context window, that's great. And it forgets less as a consequence of that. But it's a factor that is important to understand. I would recommend having a wee look at this delicious book.
And it's backwards. Understanding deep language. It's reverse.
Deep learning.
It might be reversed on it's there. But
is there a way to do this? There's a reverse camera setting here.
It's okay.
Mirror camera, no. Ready? There we
go.
go.
Hey, you got it.
Yeah.
And who's the
Simon
author? Simon Prince.
Yeah, majestic volume. And what blows me away about this book is it's gorgeous. There's all kinds of really nicely colored stuff there. There's graphs and illustrations of things, all kinds of stuff in here. And I've been having a great time with this book. Got it a couple months back. And it outlines all kinds of deep learning things, not just large language models, not just transformers.
Awesome.
cool.
I'm going to get a copy myself. Everybody, by the way, these sessions are recorded. So in case you missed it, you can go back to the video recording on YouTube and pick up the books that we mentioned. I've copied a few things out there. One other last thing I'm going to mention with you, Michael, is that one of the other items you said is that it doesn't really ask questions. If anyone goes to, and I'm not recommending this AI, it's just funny. I mentioned at the beginning that I thought you had mentioned it from a roundtable we were on, which was Pi AI. It's like pi.ai. And I will tell you something, that thing where you said it doesn't ask questions, that's all it does is ask you questions. And it gets annoying. I was actually trying to have it do something for me. He goes, I don't really do that. I just ask a bunch of questions. I'm like, you're useless.
Well, but I don't think so. And let me tell you why I don't think that's useless.
Okay.
Because of the role that any idea generation thing has for us. Anything that we use, a book, a program, a chatbot, they're not necessarily useless. But what they depend on is what you bring to the table. That's key. What's key? And here's one that I would like everybody.
And just to let our moderator know, we're going to wrap up in like 2 minutes here. I love talking to Michael here. He always has great stuff, and I sit down in conferences when he's on them. Go ahead.
Please put that link, the one I just sent you, please put that in there, because despite my attempt to get the whole world to look at it, this is not written by me, by the way. This is written by a guy named Baldur Bjarnason. He did something that annoyed me immensely, which is he beat me to a much better post than I had written so far. This is a really, really good breakdown on how LLMs are just like a mentalist, just like somebody who's good at doing cold reading. And the thing about, well, do you do that stuff?
I do. I have a little background from college for about 20 years in magic. I know a lot about cold reading, and I idolize Penn and Teller.
Okay, well, I idolize Penn and Teller too. A guy named Ian Rowland was introduced to me as a keynote speaker for the 2013 Eurostar conference, and I've had several conversations with him. He's written a book called the Full Facts Book at Cold Reading, I think is what it's called. Ian Rowland, Rowland is the guy's name. And it breaks down exactly how cold reading works. And if you look at it, large language model chatbots exploit exactly the same things, because we bring into a cold reading, the subjects bring into a cold reading all kinds of stuff where they're filling in the stuff that the cold reader is describing.
Yep.
And we see that as insightful because we don't notice the ways in which we're contributing to the conversation. And I think that is most of the reason that people got so excited about LLMs, when the Transformers really started to accelerate in December 2022 or so. We got excited about that, as though we were sitting at a cold reading and saying, wow, this thing is insightful. But with time, we go to realize there's a whole bunch of tricks, and there's a whole bunch that we bring in to fill in the blanks that a chatbot isn't supplying. Yep. That makes it appear insightful. So all it has to do is introduce one little detail that we hadn't thought of and said, oh, it's brilliant. But of course, it's not doing that because it's insightful. It's doing that because there's a whole bunch of shit in its training data that happens to coincide with something that interests us. You know what else we don't notice? All the other crap that is inaccurate or that is irrelevant or excessive. People get overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that goes by and they don't look at it very carefully. There's all these kinds of things that allow us to fool ourselves into believing that these things are way more insightful than they really are, which is, by the way, zero. They're not insightful at all. They're based on accumulated knowledge of accumulated text, not even knowledge, on the web. So there you go.
Thank you.
David and LinkedIn user, please contact me. You can do that on LinkedIn. Ask me in a message, and I will tell you what. I will, if you ask me in a direct message, I will provide the response. Or if you @ me, I guess, link to me in a public message in LinkedIn, that will come into my attention, and I will answer the question in public.
Awesome. Mike, I could talk with you forever. We're already 10 minutes over. It's been a great time speaking with you. I think next time we'll just make these 30-minute sessions and then we'll just spend 30 minutes of QA. I appreciate you joining. We'll have you back again. I will bump into you at another conference somewhere along the way, I'm sure, in the near future. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Paul. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
And thank you to Zappletech for hosting this too.
Yes, thank you, Zappletech and Test Rigger. I want to put that out there. I have to give a little plug to my guys. Testing without coding in plain English. The Holy Grail. Maybe they found it. Check it out. Anyway,
testing without coding in plain English.
You got it, man. Check it out before you. And by the way, 4 years ago, I was unconvinced that it's possible. And then in 17 minutes, the CEO showed me how to write a 10-step automation script. And I wrote 9 of those steps in 17 minutes. I went, okay, you have my attention. So that's all I really want to.
We'll have to talk a little later.
We will talk. You know where I'm at. The Dark Arts Wizard at gmail.com. Look me up. A Dark Arts Wizard. Find the gears. Any one of those social media things. Reach out anytime, Michael. We'll talk a little bit more, and I'd be happy to show you a demo. Take care, everybody. Cheers. Thank you so much.
Take care.